Hello there makers, it is Jo here from Minerva, and today we're here to do another addition to our Fabric Masterclass. Today we're going to be looking at cord, or if you call it corduroy, it's a woven fabric with a rib texture. This series is linked to our fabric guide, which is a comprehensive guide to 70 of our most popular base cloths. It's not a project book. Inside you'll get lots of knowledge and information about fabric types, about how fabrics are made, and about the fibre content that are inside the fabric that we buy. So if you're looking for a cord, then you might find a cotton cord, a polyester cord, a stretch cord, and if you know the fibre content of that fabric, then you'll know how it's going to behave and how to wash and look after it. Let's take a look at the cord page. On the cord page, you'll find that it has a difficulty rating of 4 out of 5, and that's really because of the care you need for cutting it and working with the nap of the fabric. Cord does come in different fibre contents, but it's mostly in cotton, but it can have some mixes. There's some characteristics here of cord, some details about the fabric, and also the fabric sample. This one here is a 7-well cord, and it's got a little bit of lycra in it that gives it a stretch, so you can test the fabric to see if it works for the project that you want it to work for. There's some sewing tips which I'm going to talk about today, but the joy of the fabric guide is that you can maybe decide to use cord, think it might make something a bit bulky or it won't wear as you want it to, and you can compare it to another fabric. So for example, coating might be a better option, or if you want something lighter, you can feel the difference of the fabric weight if you go, for example, over to a denim. Either way, the fabric guide will help you to decide which cord you'd like to buy. Corduroy is suitable for lots of different garment wear, especially for autumn and winter. And today I'm going to be making the flint trousers in cord. I'm going to make the shorts version just because it's a little bit quicker for me to make as a sample and to show you little parts under the machine. I'm going to make view D with the tie shape, but if you make these trousers in viscose or a linen, then you'll get a summer weight version of these trousers, or you can make them in a coating or a cord and you'll get a more winter feel. Depending on the thickness of the cord that you choose will depend on the weight of the trousers that you get. So today I'm using a 8-wale cord, and that's going to give me a sort of autumn pair of shorts. I'm going to wear my shorts with thick tights today so that I can get that kind of styling. If you choose a lighter cord, so this one is a baby cord, it really does just feel like a thick weight cotton fabric. It's still got some movement, but it's got enough structure for collars, and this would also make these shorts or trousers, but you would get a lighter version. This shirt is hacked from New Look 6449. I love the shirt dress that I first made from this pattern, and then I hacked it into a shirt. I really like wearing it as an overshirt, or I sometimes wear it buttoned up, collars out, and wear it as a winter shirt. Let's take a look at some different types of cord, and I'm going to try and help you to distinguish between one cord and another, especially when you're shopping online. So that you can be sure what type of cord you're getting, you'll need to take note of the wale number of the fabric. So if you look on the fabric description, you'll see a number, and that denotes how many wales, and that's a word for these ribs, are per inch. So this one, for example, which is the red cord that I'm using today, this is an 8-wale cord. So there are 8 of those wales per inch of fabric. It sometimes denotes the thickness of the fabric, but not always. But the thicker the ribs, the thicker the fabric. It's quite stable. It's got a little bit of give on the cross grain, but not on the straight grain. This one is a jumbo cord. This has been washed a few times, so it's got a little bit of a fuzzy texture. The ribs are much wider in this one, maybe a 3-wale cord. You can also get a stretch cord, so check out the fabric fibre content, because you might find that your cord has a little bit of stretch. That's useful if you're making jean style trousers or fitted trousers, fitted pinafores and winter dresses. also get them patterned. This pattern's not available anymore, I don't think, but there's some really beautiful ones from Dashwood Studio and some other patterned cords. So you might want it to be your statement piece rather than a solid colour. Or on my shirt today, this is a 21 wale cord, and this is called baby cord. It makes winter shirts, so it's definitely still quite a firm medium to heavy, but it's not the same as these ones. If you made dungarees in these, they would be a summer weight dungaree. If you made dungarees in this, it would be more of a winter weight dungaree. So do check the wale size of your cord fabric, because that will give you an idea of how prominent the ribs will be. I'm going to start sewing up my shorts. I'm going to show you some little sample pieces of sewing. This is not a sew along, so you won't see how to make the flint trousers from start to finish. You'll just see me dipping in and out of the project so that I can show you some different techniques. We're going to take a slightly longer look than usual on the cutting part of cord, because that's one of the things that changes it from difficulty rating sort of 1 or 2, because it's easy to sew, up to 4, because you need to make sure that you're observing the grain line and the nap. Both of those things will affect your garment in the end. When cutting cord, you need to make sure that you've got the wrong side up so that you can use your chalks and marking tools. It's slightly harder to mark and keep chalk on the fuzzy side. So I'm going to put my fabric right sides together, but I need to know now which way the nap is going. So I'm going to feel the fabric. One way it feels really smooth, the other way it feels rough, and you can see I'm wrinkling the fabric there. So this way it feels like a mole. So the nap is going this way. I'm going to keep that marked on the wrong side, because now I can make sure that when I'm putting my pattern pieces on, I stick to this nap. So bearing this nap line in mind, I'm then going to pay attention to the grain line on my pattern piece. So this is the short front, and I want to make sure that the nap of the fabric is running from my waist down to my hem. I also want to make sure that the grain line is straight, because the fabric already has a visual rib on the right side. So if I'm slightly off grain, then those ribs will start running off center and it'll look really obvious. So I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to my grain line than I normally would. So the nap is going this way. So I need the grain line of my shorts from top to bottom to also be running this way. Because I want to pay special attention to that grain line, I'm actually going to pin it, not just put pattern weights on. I'm going to pin the grain line in place and make sure, in my case, that it's 20 centimetres from the folded edge so that nothing twists. Then all of my ribs will be running parallel from the top of my shorts to the bottom. I could use weights now for the rest of this. I like to cut with pins. And I just need to be thinking a little bit more about how I'm cutting out and just taking a little bit more time and care to be double checking myself. It means when I cut out the short back, I can't turn this around to give myself this extra bit of fabric here, because these would have the nap going the wrong way. So I still need to be going top to bottom, following the nap line. Got this little space here, but I might be able to put my pocket piece here. We're all cut out, so now it is time to head over to the machine. We're going to take a look at how to sew up cord. We're going to take a special note to check we're not getting any creeping. I've got a universal needle in my machine. It's an 80, but you need to be matching the weight of your needle with the weight of your fabric. So the heavier the fabric, the higher the number. Jeans needles tend to be around 90 and 100, and a universal needle here is an 80. I'm going to have my stitch tension on 4. I'm going to use a straight stitch, and I'm just going to lengthen my stitch a little bit because this is quite a thick fabric. I'm going to just try a normal straight stitch, and I'm going to make sure that I am sewing in the direction of nap. I've got a good seam. I can press my seam open on the reverse, and you can see I've got a tiny bit of creeping because this one has moved along a little bit more than this one. So I'm going to switch out for a walking foot. These two fabrics are exactly the same length. This is the direction of nap, but this time I have my walking foot on. The fabric is the same at both ends, and it happens with any fabric that's got a nap or a plushy finish. You can find that sometimes the fabric will move along, especially if it's smooth like this, and it will take one side more than another because the feed dog in the bottom is moving faster than a smooth foot. So this way the two feed dogs will work together and keep your fabric the same length. So walking foot helps if your fabric is creeping. It's sometimes helpful to also try a test piece with the nap going the other way. That will also check that your fabric isn't creeping along. If your fabric has a stretch in the width, like the pattern one that I showed you, then it's also a good idea to practice sewing across the ribs. If your fabric does have stretch, then let the feed dogs do all of the moving. Don't pull your fabric. If you pull it, you'll get a wavy edge. We'll take a look at finishing because you can see I'm getting lots and lots of shedding because the fabric is made up of a weave, and all these little bits of wale, the tufted fluffy bits, come off as the fabric is worked on the edge. So let's have a look at that finishing. You can finish your edges with pinking shears. That will stop the fabric from fraying, but you'll get more longevity if you also zigzag the seam allowance. These two methods in combination will stop that seam allowance from fraying. You can also use an overcast stitch. This one will give you all the benefits of the zigzag, but it's just a little bit stronger because it stabilizes the seam as well. You can overlock the edges. If you overlock them together, you might find your seam is a little bit bulky on one side, so you'll get a little bit of a hump where you've got both pieces of raw edge going to one side. So it's a good idea to open your seams out so that you distribute the bulk behind. If you need to unpick cord, then from the reverse you can break a stitch, create a hole in your seam, and then you can use the ball of your unpicker to seam rip your seams apart. The ball protects the fabric, and you can take the bits out. You might find that you'll get a little line where you had your stitching, so before you reapply something or do something again to cover a mistake or redo a mistake, then just press your fabric with the crush cloth or another piece of cord so that you keep all of the nap and all of the wales, but you don't want to see where the previous stitch line was. When you're marking cord, you will find it easy to mark all of your pattern features on the back of the fabric. So I've got a dart here in the backs of my trousers, so I've added those with a chalk pencil, because if you try and put something on the right side, sometimes the fuzziness means you can't be accurate, and the ribs will sometimes take your chalk into a position you don't want it to, and it rubs off really quickly on the fuzzy side. You could easily tell the right side and the wrong side of cord. The ridges are on the right side and the back is smooth. You can use tailor's tacks if you want to. You can snip in the seam allowance, or you can use a combination. Pin however you feel most confident. So around a curve, I like to put my pins like this, and on longer, straighter edges, then I pin with my pins like this so they hold down more of the fabric. As your layers start to build up, so here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of cord, then just on that pocket edge I'm going to use some clips. I can give you lots of tips on how to press cord. You do need to be careful because of that plushy texture. When you're pressing cord, always press from the wrong side. So that you don't damage the cord ribs. If you've got a elastane content or a polyester content, then you might need to turn your iron down. If you've got quite a deep pile, then another way that you can stop the pile from getting crushed is to use a crush cloth. So this is a press cloth on the one side, like a white cotton, and then this back is like a sponge. You can't put the iron on the sponge because it would melt, but you can press the right side of the fabric without crushing the ribs, because this has got a little bit of give and bounce in it, so the ribs can absorb into the spongy texture. If you don't have a crush cloth, you can use another piece of cord so that the ribs are against each other. I'm ironing from the wrong side of the press piece, and the two ridges can sink into each other. It just stops that all getting crushed out of position. It's also good if you're dragging your iron to drag in the direction of the nap. So if you're pressing a long seam, first press towards the nap. If you press on the right side and drag, you might get a different colour variation where you've pressed all of those nap fibres in the opposite direction. It also feels a little bit scratchy now because everything has been slightly misplaced. Seams can look a little bouncy on cord, especially if you've just caught one of the thicker ribs in your seam line. So always press those from the reverse. If you want to get out any other little dimples or areas, then don't forget to use a press cloth. On my short fronts, I've got 2 areas that I'd like to press. So I'd like a crisp edge along the pocket. So here I'm going to press from the right side with my press cloth. I'm not going to drag, I'm just going to press through the cloth. I don't want to drag those ribs that are on a diagonal sew line there into a funny position. This is my centre front tuck. Now I don't want that to be pressed and go all shiny on the edge, so here I'm just going to add steam and press by hand. It makes a softer pleat that doesn't make the fabric all shiny. So you might want a really crisp flat edge, or you might want something softer. You can also use the press cloth as an ironing board, the crush one. So this is the cotton side, so you can put your items here you can use a second press cloth on the top, and you'll see how the press cloth works there, the crush one. It absorbs the texture of the fabric. I can have one flat side to one of my ties and one nice plushy side. Cord is generally a medium to heavyweight fabric, so you'll start to build up bulky layers quite quickly. So let's look at some layering out techniques. Up to this point of my trousers or cords, I haven't been going through too many thick layers, a little bit there at the pocket side, but now I'm going to start adding the waistband. I'm going to start needing to layer out some seams, because as I put my waistband on, I'm going to start really getting much more bulk around the waist. To reduce bulk, especially here where I've got the tips of these tie corners to pull through, I'm just going to take out both layers of fabric at the tip end, and then I'm going to take out one layer on the straight seams. It might look a little bit of a mess, but it means when I turn this tie to the right side, I'll have less bulk, especially at the tip end. These are now ready to put onto my waistband. Other places you might want to reduce bulk are on the waistband. So here, if I turn this waistband over and then turn the fabric, I'm getting quite a thick chunky layer there, which might you know, make my stitch in the ditch wobble off a little bit. It's probably a little bit uncomfortable and slightly unflattering to wear. So you can change up areas where you think you're going to create bulk, and I'm going to bind the edge of my waistband so that I just have a single layer. It also means I can stitch in the ditch more easily. Everything's lying flat now to stitch just under the waistband, and I'll get that little pop of colour on the inside. I really like this technique. It means that even if I haven't got an even stitch line on the inside, everything still looks neat on the inside, and the stitch in a ditch works well on the outside. Depending on what you're making, you may need to stabilise some of your fabric, either to make a lighter cord a little bit firmer or to hold a particular piece in position. For the waistband, I have cut this waistband with the cross grain, so all of the ribs will match up on my shorts and all the ribs will be going in this direction. The thing with this is it does make the waistband a little bit stretching with a little bit more give. You can cut the waistband on the other plane and then you'll get a much firmer waistband, and obviously you're going to be playing around with the rib pattern there, so the ridges will be going in the opposite direction. So it depends what you like the look of and the comfort fit of. Because I'm using the waistband on that cross grain cut, I'm going to add interfacing. The pattern recommends that I add interfacing. This is a waistband interfacing, which is ideal to use if your waistband is straight. If you've got a curved waistband, then you're going to need to cut out interfacing pieces and fuse them to your fabric. Again, think back to those pressing tips. How much heat am I going to add to this, and am I going to damage the right side of the fabric? So go gently, use this press cloth, put a piece of cord down on your ironing board so that the ribs match the same direction, and press on your interfacing. This interfacing is called waistband interfacing, and I really like it because this centre line here makes the fold of my waistband really accurate. It does only allow for a 1 centimetre seam allowance, so I would like a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So I've just changed the width of my waistband. It's also a little bit narrower than the pattern suggests because I like a slightly narrower waistband. Once you've got your waistband interfacing on, I'm then putting the ties on my shorts in this case, but this waistband interfacing is great. It's a really good way of getting an accurate waistband because you can use the cutouts as a stitch guide. Depending on what you're making, you might be adding a zip or some buttons. So let's have a look at some finishing techniques. It's always a good idea to practice your buttonholes, especially if you're doing your buttonhole across the ribs, because you want to make sure that it's not squashing everything down. If you're using a jumbo cord, it's quite difficult to get a buttonhole that doesn't flatten all of the wales in the fabric, but it's good to do a practice one and see if you're happy with the result. I'm not happy with this one. The ribs of the cord got slightly sticky with the feed dogs, so I'm going to use a piece of tissue paper. If you put a piece of tissue paper over the feed dogs, it means that the ribs aren't catching on the little teeth of the feed dogs and it will run much smoother. This happened because I was doing my buttonhole across the ribs. This one where I've used a piece of tissue, the buttonholer was able to complete its full motion, and then you just tear the tissue off the back. If you're doing a buttonhole going down the ribs, then it's a good idea to practice one of those too. You shouldn't have any problems applying a zip to cord. You just need to make sure that you've got the nap going in the right direction, and I would do all of the tacking because you don't want your zipper tape, which is smooth, to creep along the wale and nap of the fabric. I've just popped a button on. I've tried my shorts on to check for the waist, and of course you've got this handy tie on view D, which means it is slightly adjustable, so you can pull that in a little bit and you'll just have a little wrinkle on the inside, but it gives the shorts a little bit more life if your waist size changes a little. We've got lots of tips for hemming over on our Minerva YouTube channel, so I'm going to show you how I hemmed these trousers and a few things to bear in mind. On these cord shorts, I'm just turning up once, and I've used a hot hammer to make sure that the hem is the same all the way around, and I'm going to hand stitch. Cord doesn't really like top stitching that much. It depends. If you're making jeans and you've got a top stitching detail throughout, then you will have had lots of practice and you can practice on a test piece. But if you've got a really jumbo cord, it sometimes pushes the pile down and it does look a little bit unsightly, so you're going to have to decide on the type of cord that you've got whether it's suitable for top stitching or not. On my cord shirt, because it was a baby cord, I could top stitch all of the cuffs and I could top stitch the collars and the button band, and all of those details look great. They look good because they're in a matching thread. So you'll have a few choices to make when you get to the finishing of your cord. Today I'm going to hand stitch. What you want to avoid is creating a spongy hem. So this one I've just pinned as a double folded hem, and it just feels so thick and a little bit unwieldy when really it would be better if I could keep it flat. If you don't have an overlocked edge, you can also use some of the bias binding, and you could bind the edge of something. So you could add your binding on a machine pass and then use that fabric as your hand stitch, and then your raw edge will be enclosed. There are lots of different hemming techniques that you can choose, and you can check those out in our hemming video. There's lots of different styles there for all different types of fabric and different garment types, so you might need to make a good choice for cord. With hand sewing, you just get a little pick up there, so make sure that your stitches are an even width apart and the hem will be nice and flat and not too bulky. Here are the shorts. I'm wearing them with tights today. I think in hindsight I probably would have gone for the button version with cord. I did just have a go at the tie, but the tie is a little bit thick in cord. But because I've got that nap running from top to bottom, top to bottom, then I'm not getting a different colour hue from each side, and I won't get any dragging when I'm sitting down. I pre-washed the fabric because this one has got a cotton content, so I know that these shorts will be fitting me for a long time. My trousers are all done, but I'm going to give you one final tip, which is to clean out your sewing machine after you've been using corduroy fabric. If you take out the foot plate, you'll notice lots of that red lint in and around the bobbin holder and inside this part of the machine. Give everything a little brush. All fabrics that have quite a strong nap or a velvety texture or a fluffy texture like cord will benefit from a full clean out afterwards. It will mean that your machine will keep running properly for your subsequent projects. You can also use a cotton bud just to get into any areas where fluff has built up over time. And you can use tweezers to get out any specific bits of lint that are stuck in particular places. I've got one there. Let's look at what people have been making. So if you've got a light baby cord, you can use it for making shirts for men, women. You can use it as an overshirt style so that it works between seasons. You can make coats depending on what you line it with. You can change up the thickness of your cord for men or women. For trousers, you can try a stretch content, which is helpful for sitting down. You can make fitted styles or more relaxed styles. Cord is great for kids wear because it's hard wearing and durable. You often see it made into pinafores, either the bib style or a casual style for layering up. Other dresses you might find are shirt dresses, dresses with quite a big sleeve energy because the fabric holds the structure, or for more fitted styles. Corduroy is used for bags and dungarees. You often see a really great pair of dungarees on our website, or you can check out some of our patterned print cords. I hope you enjoyed that maker gallery. If you've been inspired by anything there, then do keep your eyes peeled for Vicky's video, where she'll be doing some pattern pairing with corduroy so that you can make some really good choices. This is the Minerva fabric guide. You can go and check this out on our YouTube channel, where you'll see both Vicky and me take a little walkthrough of the guide for you. There's lots of extra information there, but a quick look for you now. The folder starts with some information about how fabrics are made, how the fibres are put together, how knit fabrics and woven fabrics compare and how they're different. And lots of top tips here for considering buying fabric, especially when you're buying fabric online. The next chapter in the book is all about fabric fibres. So if you understand some of the background information about the fibres that make up the content of your fabric, you will find out if your fabric will drape, if it's structured, if it's breathable, if it's fine, if it's synthetic, natural, how it's made, some of the processes. And if you know all of this background information, then you'll be able to head to the alphabetical order section, the final chapter of the book, and start choosing and comparing fabric, not based on the print or the colour it is, but actually what that fabric is going to do for you. And you can also use the QR code. If you scan the QR code, it will filter all Bengaline fabrics to your search, so you don't have to look through thousands and thousands of fabrics that you don't want to explore. You can actually really compare the one that you're interested in, and then you can find out which is the most suitable for the pattern that you have chosen. There are 70 of our most popular base cloths in the folder. There are others, but we've looked at the ones that we think people will most likely use in garment sewing. If you have any questions about working with corduroy, you can leave those in the comments below, or if you've made something with corduroy, then we would love to see what you have been making. So do make an account over at Minerva, make a free profile, share your makes there, a few photographs. It doesn't matter where they are, they don't have to be model worthy. We just love to see what people have been up to. You can add some details there. You can say if you found something tricky, you can say if you thought it was easier than you thought, you can give us your top tips, and that will really inspire our Minerva makers. Do call back for more of our Fabric Masterclass. If you subscribe, they will pop up and in your notifications, and you'll know when they're next available. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.